in Philadelphia. Let's go ahead and hop down to our players in the feature match area whenever they're ready.
So you may recognize Cedric Phillips, but he does not have the suit on. He is not in the commentator booth. He is in the trenches fighting the good fight, and he's doing pretty well. He's 6-2.
Yeah, so he's live. If he wins this round, he'll be able to come back for some more Magic tomorrow. He has been coming over every round, you know, telling us things we've been doing right, things we've been doing wrong here in the booth. We've been letting him know. Yeah. He's doing a good job on Magic.
Yeah, he is. 6-2 is certainly nothing to scoff at. A lot of the times when you see someone like Cedric who does a lot of commentary, sometimes you forget about his competitive chops. But Cedric is a really
a Pro Tour top 8 competitor.
Yeah, he is. People forget about that. People forget how good Cedric is, and he's a really good Magic player, and it's nice to see him, you know, showing his stuff at this event.
So as soon as the players are ready to battle, we're going to go ahead and get them going. Again, both players at 6-2, back against the wall. Do or die time for this match. The winner is going to be able to come back tomorrow and play for all the glory and SCG Tour points. The winner will get to come back tomorrow and play for SCG Tour points. Not as much glory since it'll be in a classic, but they still get to battle some more Magic.
Yeah, for sure.
So Kevin is going to lead on a Volcanic Island and a Delver of Secrets and pass the turn back over to Cedric. And let's see what all SCGP can put together.
Yeah. So one thing that's going to be a little interesting about this is the Reanimator deck, when it combos off with the card Reanimate, usually loses a lot of life. So while the blue-red Delver is usually a little less equipped to deal with combo decks because it's a little more burn heavy, a little lighter on the counter spells, the burn can be pretty effective against the card Reanimate. So it'll be interesting to see how that interacts in this matchup.
So Cedric's going to fall to 19 using his Verdant Catacombs. He's going to go get an Underground Sea. There's a lot of one-mana spells. Careful Study is what he's going to lead off with. So we have the potential to see a turn 1 fatty. Even if it's something like Elish Norn Grand Cenobite or Iona Shield of Emeria, it might not be Gristlebrand, but those two creatures are going to be real tough for Kevin to beat.
Yeah, even an Inkwell Leviathan is just going to be huge and just going to kill Kevin in 3 turns. So that would be the bottom of the list for things that I would want to reanimate. But certainly, you know, even at the bottom of the list, it's going to be real good on turn 1.
So Cedric's going to discard a Gristlebrand and an Iona to that Careful Study. Going to pass the turn over to Kevin. His Delver of Secrets is not going to flip, which is kind of crazy considering
his deck's like all spells.
Yeah, he has 18, 12, so 30. It's 50-50 on things that flip Delver and things that don't flip Delver.
Pretty impressive.
We're going to have a Monastery Swift Spear off of a Volcanic Island, Ponder off of another one. Looks like he's going to shuffle, so he's not going to have that guaranteed Delver flip next turn, but he is going to get a Prowess trigger on that Monastery Swift Spear. So he's going to get to crash for 3 this turn if he doesn't have, you know, any free spells like Cataxian Probe to see what Cedric has going on. And that's going to knock Cedric down to 16, which isn't very low when we're looking at possibly exhuming a Gristlebrand next turn.
Yeah, for sure. The blue-red Delver deck, though, is going to put pressure on a little faster than all the other Delver decks. So while Cedric doesn't have, you know, he doesn't have to face the land destruction that a lot of the other Delver decks has, so his mana's safe, he does have to worry about facing a slightly faster clock than normal.
So Kevin's just going to attack for 3, put Cedric down to 16, and pass the turn back. Cedric's going to take a draw. And let's see what he does here. Any exhume, he's going to reanimate.
Ooh, kaboom. Is this resolve? Do you have days? Not good enough.
Just going to target Gristlebrand's going to get a 7/7.
This has got to be it.
7/7 flying lifelink. Now
Cedric is too strong.
He's going to go down to 8 though, so he could potentially just die to a bunch of burn.
He could, but Kevin's got to have it all right now.
So Reanimate's going to put Gristlebrand onto the battlefield. He's going to lose 8 life, going from 16 down to 8. Pass the turn back over to Kevin. So if Kevin has something, you know, he could just win with a bunch of burn here. It's going to be rough. Now Cedric will be able to crack back for 7 in the air, gain some life up to 15, but it will leave his shields down if he's not able to get that something like that Iona onto the battlefield that's in the graveyard.
Yeah, indeed. I wonder if it. Yeah, this does seem like the best thing. I'd be curious if. What would be the reasons you would want to put Iona there and maybe name red?
Instead of the Gristlebrand?
Yeah. You would have to wait until you draw an Exhume to play Gristlebrand to lock out the game.
Yeah, maybe. Although, like, being able to attack with this Gristlebrand is going to give him a little bit of a buffer, and he could just, pay 7 to draw into an Exhume if he needs to.
Yeah, I would certainly rather play the Grizzlebrand, but it's interesting to think about given the fact that he has both options.
So we've got a Storm Chaser Mage from Kevin. So we've got 3 creatures.
And if Cedric attacks, he has to worry about a pretty vicious crackback. Those prowess triggers can add up quite a bit. So this is a card that was newly printed that some players may not be familiar with, but it's a pretty sweet one, and it's certainly one that fits into the shell quite well. Flying in particular is something that these decks always want. When you're attacking with creatures and you really want them to do damage, having some sort of evasion is pivotal. And the fact that it's Legacy with all the 1-mana cantrips, and this deck having a bunch of 1-mana burn spells, that prowess trigger can add up to quite a bit.
So Kevin's just going to pass the turn back to Cedric. Now let's see what he has going on. Maybe he can attack with this Gristlebrand, try and draw some cards. At this point, I think that he needs to get something like Elish Norn Grand Cenobite onto the battlefield.
Oh, that would be great.
That'll handle a bunch of Kevin's creatures. That Storm Chaser Mage will still be alive, even though it's a -1/1. So, prowess can get it pumped a little bit. But I think Elish Norn will kind of close this game up.
Even Iona may be good enough because he could potentially play the Iona and then start attacking. And if you name red, there's really not much that Kevin can do to finish Cedric off.
Here we go. Cedric's going to attack with that Gristlebrand.
And I like this play from Cedric. He is advantaged by having that Gristlebrand in play, and that advantage is going to slowly dissipate as Kevin builds more and more of a board. So Cedric kind of wants to seize the opportunity and take advantage of this moment while he has an advantage, because if he doesn't do it now, it will dissipate.
So the attack's going to put Kevin down to 12. Cedric's going to go back up to 15. He's doing some math here on how many cards he can draw, what he's trying to hit. If he does decide to draw 7 cards with Gristlebrand, he's going to go back down to 8. Let's see what he's got going on.
I wonder if he's got another Reanimate. That would be a reason to do a lot of math.
Yeah, he could just Reanimate that Iona. He's going to ponder first, see what he's got.
Land Exhume would probably be the safest thing, but he'd have to worry about a potential daze.
I have a funny Gristlebrand story.
While we
wait for Cedric to finish up this ponder.
Lay it on me.
One of my top 8 matches. No, I was playing for top 8 in Providence with Sneak and Show against a Death and Taxes style deck. And I just turn 1 Show and Tell into Gristlebrand, and my opponent puts in Spirit of the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
So
Did you draw 7?
Well, no, I can't. I can only draw 1 card.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
So on my opponent's turn, I paid 7 to draw a card.
Yeah.
Because I'm just gaining the 7 life back with my Gristlebrand. So I was able to pay 7 to draw a card. It's the most expensive card drawn in the history of Magic.
I think I've been there and done that also. I hate playing against the Death and Taxes deck. We had that on earlier, and I was kind of, poking fun of it because it. A lot of the cards are a little anemic on their own, but together they work pretty cohesively, and they can be really good against Reanimator and Show and Tell.
Yeah, it is quite a well-oiled machine. So Cedric's going to Thoughtseize Kevin, get rid of that Swift Spear. So he didn't have any spells anyways, but something like, Delver of Secrets revealing Brainstorm flipping here would be real bad for Cedric if he has no more action.
Oh, that would be devastating. That alone would be 10 damage. So if the Brainstorm found a Lightning Bolt, it would just be game over. I think Cedric is making the right play, though.
He does have a Force of Will, so he has some protection. Ooh. Well, there's a Probe, so that's going to be bad, too. That has the potential to be real bad.
Yeah.
So that's going to trigger Prowess, draw Kevin into another card. Although, I would pay mana for this. There we go.
Yeah.
So Kevin's going to go ahead and cast Gataxian Probe after flipping his Delvers, trigger Prowess on both Storm Chaser Mage and Monastery Swift Spear. And I think Cedric is doing some math. So we got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right now just by itself.
Seems worth it for Cedric to Force of Will this if he can. drawing into another attack cantrip would be really bad. Because if Kevin draws into another cantrip, then I believe Cedric won't even be able to Force of Will it.
Yeah. I think he has to Force of Will here.
Yeah.
Man, these little creatures. This
is fast, too. I mean, this is turn 4.
We saw Gristlebrand get outraced way back when Treasure Cruise was printed.
Yeah.
Bob Huang won the first Legacy Open with his Blue-Red Delver deck. And we saw Young Pyromancer racing Gristlebrand on camera for the win, and it was insane.
Yeah, Prowess is a pretty interesting mechanic, particularly in Legacy. It's something that you can put on pretty small creatures, but with all of Legacy's Brainstorms and Ponders and whatnot, it can add up to a lot on specific turns.
Yeah, it's basically Storm on a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So Cedric is going to Force of Will that probe, pitching a Careful Study. This attack's going to come in for 10, put Cedric down to 2.
So at least Cedric can crack his fetch land knowing that he won't die, but he certainly needs something to help him out here.
So if he attacks back for 7, that's going to knock Kevin down to 5, and Cedric will go up to 9. And if he has nothing, he's basically dead to a spell. But if Kevin bricks, then he's not dead.
I kind of like going for the attack here, although it's going to be pretty bad for Cedric. The thing is, if he just sits on his hands, things are likely to get worse.
I agree.
So the way that Cedric would mitigate the most risk would be to not attack. That would be the quote-unquote safe play. But he's probably just going to guarantee that he dies later.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't attack, you're just dead to a burn spell. So, a burn spell kills him
either way.
Either way. So then at that point, there's been 3 volcanics, and no fetches have been used. Mm-hmm. So 12.
He could also draw another
16.
Delver.
So there's 13 lands and 2 Delvers still in the deck.
Yeah, he could also draw the other haste creatures. They wouldn't be enough. Oh, yes, they would. Never mind.
Yeah, 6, 7, 8. So it's basically land, Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, it looks like Cedric is probably going to die here, but I like his line of play anyway.
Price of Progress is also a brick.
Oh, that would be insane.
Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah. And Kevin isn't slamming it.
Spell Pierce is a brick too. So is Force of Will. So
is Daze.
So there are quite a few bricks.
Wow, and Kevin isn't doing anything quickly, so it looks like Cedric is not dead this turn.
We might be out of the water for a second.
Man, what a close, tight game, and Cedric is pulling through.
So we're just going to attack for 7, and he's going to leave back Storm Chaser Mage to block. So it's basically going to Fog, attack for 7, gain 7, and this is going to give Kevin another draw step.
Notably now, some of his top decks that were available last turn aren't available this turn. Now, if he draws one of those haste creatures, it's not good enough. And a single cantrip by itself won't be good enough either. The cantrip is going to need to hit something else that he can cast.
Now, if he did happen to draw something like Daze, then a cantrip would be good enough since he could Daze his own cantrip.
Right.
But a Force of Will would be a brick. Price of Progress would be real awkward.
Having to chump block with that creature, though, was a really big deal. Kevin had a lot more outs on the previous turn than he did this turn. That said, it's still razor sharp. Kevin has a lot of things that will instantly win him the game.
This has been a pretty sweet game.
This has been a pretty sweet game. A lot of times with Reanimator, it's just as simple as I put in Grizzlebrand on turn 2, and that was the game. Or I didn't, so I lost. But this one, we are in a real racing scenario. It's not often that you get to see a bunch of 1-drops race a 7-mana, 7/7 lifelinker like Grizzlebrand that is kind of one of the hallmark best creatures in the format.
I love it when Grizzlebrand has to get dirty, get in the battlefield, get in the combat zone. Oh, here we go. And we drew lightning bolt.
Oh, man, and Cedric, can he do anything here? Doesn't look like it. A really close game. I really liked Cedric's line of plays. And I'm not just saying that because he's, part of coverage, but I think he he did what he needed to do, but Kevin was able to just have a pretty powerful draw that could race even a Griselbrand, really showcasing the power of the blue-red Delver deck.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboards here for these two players, see what kind of options we have. So Kevin Ann on Blue-Red Delver, he has 2 Pyroblast, 2 Smash to Smithereens, 1 Rough Tumble, 1 Ensnaring Bridge, 1 Submerge, 1 Price of Progress, a Pithy Needle, a Null Rod, 1 Grim Lavamancer, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Flusterstorm, 1 Sulfuric Vortex, 1 Surgical Extraction. Man, these Legacy sideboards have been a mouthful.
Yeah. So the cards that I like bringing in are the Pyroblasts, even though they don't hit the specific combo pieces. Hitting a lot of the cantrips or counter magic can be very useful. Ensnaring Bridge is going to be a great card to bring in. Pithing Needle can name Griselbrand, can be quite good. Doesn't completely answer it, but still a good one. Grafdigger's Cage, definitely going to want to come in. Flusterstorm and Surgical Extraction are all great cards for the matchup as well.
So Cedric on Reanimator has 4 Abrupt Decay, 3 copies of Jace Rinse Prodigy, 2 City of Traders, 2 Show and Tell, an Aetherling, an Ashen Rider, a Void Winnower, and a Blazing Archon. What do we think we're doing there?
So this is a pretty interesting sideboard for Cedric. It's in certain ways it's a little on the transformational side with the Jaces and the Show and Tells. I have to imagine that Cedric intends on bringing in a lot of his cards to make it so that he's not as reliant on his graveyard, expecting his opponent to have some graveyard hate. But the blue-red Delver deck is a little light on disruption. Cedric won't have to worry about cards like Rest in Peace and Deathrite Shaman. So there's a chance that while Cedric is on the play, he may stick to the basic game plan that he had game 1. But when he's on the draw, I would certainly expect to see him be a bit more reactive with the Jaces, Abrupt Decays, and Show and Tells. So I'm not entirely sure what Cedric is going to do. It's a little bit of a cat and mouse game.
Now, one thing to point out is when I was playing the Reanimator deck, anytime I was playing against a deck that couldn't punish me for casting Show and Tell, I would try and be very aggressive with my Show and Tells.
Yeah,
I think this is a good spot for Show and Tell. You can't really afford to pay 8 life to put Griselbrand onto the battlefield, but if you Show and Tell it, the blue-red Delver deck, they just don't really have very, very many good ways to punish you for casting Show and Tell.
I like City of Traders and Show and Tell for sure. The Jaces and Abrupt Decays, I could see them coming in, particularly when Cedric is on the draw. He might bring them in when he's on the play also, but I'm not 100% sure.
Now, Cedric, he's currently head of media for StarCityGames.com. But
he's a Star City head honcho.
But before that, he was the content manager, and he every week he would write a little piece for the StarCityGames.com newsletter. So let's go ahead and take a look at the newsletter. You see his beautiful smiling mug there at the top.
Oh, yeah.
In the StarCityGames.com newsletter, it is your source for Magic the Gathering news.
Yeah, a really sweet way to just stay up to date on things if you don't have a lot of time to go through all of the articles and just want to get the highlights. This will help you with that. It'll also give you, one match each week to kind of check out, to give you some sweet deck lists if you're looking to go to your F&M or the next Open that's going to be by you. It's also got the Cardboard Crack comic, which is a lot of fun. So it's just one of the good ways you can stay up to date on everything going on in the Magic community without having to devote a lot of time to that effort.
And you can sign up absolutely for free. Go.starcitygames.com/newsletter. It's your source for Magic the Gathering news. So again, for those of you who are just now joining us, we got Cedric Phillips against Kevin Ann. Cedric is on Reanimator. Kevin is on Blue-Red Delver. Kevin was able to eke out a very close game 1 against the Griselbrand by playing a bunch of little dorks, attacking for a bit, and then drawing a lightning bolt right off the top of his deck. And Kevin's hoping that he can win this next game, put this baby to bed, be able to come back tomorrow morning and play some Magic.
Yeah, Cedric, on the other hand, is going to be looking to get his opponent, kicked out of the convention center and, steal the win for himself. No, not really. Cedric isn't going to do something like that. He's going to try to win fair and square, but I hope he can do it. I would like to see Cedric in day 2.
Now, one card that's notably missing from Cedric's deck that I used to have 1 copy of in my 75 every time I played Reanimator was Sphinx of the Steel Wind. Yep. Just because these Delver strategies are so soft to it. Had that Griselbrand been a Sphinx of the Steel Wind in game 1, there's
completely different.
0 chance Cedric loses that game.
Yeah, so for those of you who are unfamiliar, Sphinx of the Steel Wind is a huge flyer that is lifelink and vigilance.
And protection from red and green.
Right, but it essentially is able to play offense and defense, whereas the Griselbrand we saw there, when it was attacking, shields were basically down for Cedric, which made a big difference because Kevin Ann was able to race back despite the lifelink.
So as we start game 2 here, Cedric Phillips is going to use his polluted Delta, go down to 19. He's going to fetch out an Underground Sea, and I imagine we're going to see one of these bevy of 1-mana spells that are in his deck. Ponder, doubtful that it's a Brainstorm, maybe something like Careful Study. Let's see what we've got. And there's a Ponder.
Cedric's getting more serious. He's got the sleeves rolled up. I think he's really upset by that last loss. He's going to step his game up.
So he's going to shuffle his Ponder. It looked like it was a couple lands and another cantrip. Doesn't sound like that's what he's looking for. He's going to shuffle his deck up, hand it over to Kevin, bring it back, draw a card.
And Cedric is really looking for a pretty explosive start, I would assume. Playing a longer game against Kevin can get a little worrisome because Kevin, not only does he have disruption, but he has a fairly quick clock on it in his own right.
So Kevin's going to go ahead and take his first turn. Let's see what kind of action that he has. He's hoping for just some type of creature.
Let's be fair. He's looking to play something that has 1 power on turn 1. The super powerful play. That's his best draw here, is to play a 1 power creature, and if he's lucky, attack with it.
So Kevin's going to use his Scalding Tarn, falling down to 19. He's going to go find a Volcanic Island, a beautiful unlimited Volcanic Island. And let's see what type of action Kevin has for his first turn of the game.
Man, I remember when I first started playing Magic, all the dual lands were like $10. That would have been a wise investment.
Those were the days.
Those were the good old days.
So we're going to see a 2 life being paid for a Gitaxian Probe, going to fall down to 17. And Cedric's going to have Underground Sea, Tropical Island, Polluted Delta, Entomb, Reanimate, and Careful Study. So we're going to be able to get one of those giant creatures onto the battlefield next turn if Kevin doesn't have any way to interact with Cedric with that Entomb and Reanimate.
Yeah, a lot of the times when I'm playing a deck like Reanimator, in game 1, I like to just jam it right away. But in game 2 and 3, when I'm likely to face a little bit more permission, sometimes I'm a little more inclined to slow things down and give myself a chance to play around days. I think with this Delver on the board, though, Cedric has to respect the pressure that's there, especially because he's comboing off with a card like Reanimate. And I think in his perfect world, he would play this Careful Study, hit some sort of counter spell that he can cast to protect his combo, and then go for the win. But we'll see if he wants to play things a little slower and potentially play around a days.
Kevin's just going to go ahead and play a Delver of Secrets and then pass the turn back. Now, I did catch a glimpse of the card that Kevin drew off of that Gitaxian Probe, and it was Sulfuric Vortex. So he does have a way to turn off lifelink if Cedric happens to get something on the battlefield that has lifelink, like a Griselbrand. Looks like Cedric found a Brainstorm for his turn. He's going to cast that, and hopefully this can fix his hand since he had a lot of land and some action pieces that he needed, but he wants something to try and protect his combo.
Wow, Lotus Petal's kind of a big draw there. That would be a good way for Cedric to get farther ahead on mana. Because he's on the play, he's ahead on land drops, but that Lotus Petal can catapult him even farther. So it looks like Cedric's really going to be sculpting his hand. I don't think he's going to go for it this turn, although that Lotus Petal does give him that option, I believe. Yeah, but he may just be setting himself for something really big on the following turn.
Yeah, if he did draw into something like fatty Force Will blue card, he could just go for it with Force Will back up here.
Yeah.
Ooh, I did see a checklist card, so he did bring in his Jaces.
That's a pretty cool card to see in this Reanimator deck.
Well, there's the Lotus Petal. We're casting Entomb. Let's see what he goes and gets. This would be a great spot for Sphinx of the Steel Wind. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah. That would just be game.
Maybe he just gets an Iona, or I mean an Elish Norn, because I don't think that Kevin can beat an Elish Norn. Although
he could also just get Griselbrand.
Yeah,
I mean he can kind of get anything.
With this board, Griselbrand still seems fine.
Yeah.
It's not like Kevin had the play, already has a bunch of creatures on the battlefield.
And this is definitely the game plan that Reanimator wants to execute.
Oh.
Just do a bunch of stuff on the early turns before their opponent can really do anything. The Delver deck has access to Disruption, but on the opening turns, they don't usually have access to enough mana to cast all their Disruption.
Well, there is an Elish Norn, and let's see if Cedric goes for the Reanimate now.
The nice thing about going for it next turn is Cedric could potentially play around both Spell Pierce and Daze with a land drop. The problem is that he doesn't want to spend too much time waiting, because every turn that he waits, his life total is going to be getting chipped down a little bit more.
So it looks like Kevin missed on the flip for his Delver.
That's good news.
Just going to go ahead and send it into the red zone, bring Cedric down to 17.
And it looks like Kevin has a Pyroblast in his hand, and I'd mentioned that I thought he would bring it in. It can be a little awkward, especially in a situation like this, and that might actually be a Sulfuric Vortex, but if it is a Pyroblast, it certainly highlights how Pyroblast is typically a great card against combo decks, and Cedric's deck has Careful Study, Ponder, Brainstorm, Force of Will, but the Pyroblast doesn't actually answer the cards that answer the game for Cedric, or win the game for Cedric, excuse me.
So Kevin did not have a second land. He's just going to pass it back over to Cedric. And let's see what type of game plan Cedric decides to. So now we're going to go for the Reanimate.
And with that land drop, Cedric can play around both Spell Pierce and Daze. So that's pretty phenomenal.
So Kevin's going to Brainstorm in response. I assume he's trying to find a Force of Will.
Man, I feel like all of these games just come down to mana.
Yeah.
Whoever has more mana just wins.
More mana, you can do more things. I feel like I would have brainstormed on my turn if I was Kevin to try and hit a land drop. Like if your plan to brainstorm in response to a Reanimate spell on Cedric's turn, then you might as well just use it on your turn. You're still going to get a chance to find that Force of Will. Oh.
Wow. Well, that's pretty good to hit.
Surgical Extraction. Well, good thing is there's only one copy of Elish Norn in Cedric's deck, so had that been Gristlebrand, he possibly could have got a little extra value.
Yeah.
But that Surgical Extraction, a one of, in Kevin's sideboard, is going to put in some work here and stop the Grand Cenobite from entering the battlefield.
And that was a good Brainstorm.
Now, thankfully, Cedric is going to not lose a bunch of life.
Yeah, the bad news is he's not really going to do anything either.
So as Kevin thumbed through Cedric's deck, it didn't look like he brought in Abrupt Decay, so he might not have any answers to an Ensnaring Bridge if he doesn't bring in Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, I have to imagine that Cedric's just kind of wants to do his thing.
Yeah, now, Jace can still beat Bridge by ultimating. So we got a Careful Study from Cedric. Let's see what we can get here.
Imagine you just did it again. That would be wild.
Yeah. Well, there's a City of Traders. He might have drawn a Show and Tell. Just going to discard.
I think it's Lotus Petal and Underground Sea. And he's got City of Traders and now casting a Ponder.
Oh, there's an Iona.
Cedric is digging deep. Clock is ticking.
Yeah.
He certainly needs to get this game over with sooner rather than later. Fortunately for Cedric, Kevin Ann is stumbling a little bit on mana, but despite that, Kevin Ann has been able to find what he needs thus far. That Surgical Extraction was really good.
Yeah, he also found a land off that Brainstorm, so he's going to be able to start playing some more Magic here once he gets his turn back.
I would have liked to have seen Kevin Ann play Brainstorm during his upkeep, I think. I think that would have been...
With the Delver?
Yeah, because it guarantees the Delver flip, and it gets you a little closer to, a land. But if you lock yourself, it's really bad.
Yeah, it sees one less card if you do it then, as opposed to waiting for your actual turn. I definitely think that of the three options, upkeep, main phase, or Cedric's turn, I like upkeep and main phase better than Cedric's turn. Mm-hmm. That being said, that extraction could have been the fourth card down. So
yeah.
Cedric's going to shuffle on his Ponder, see if our Devil's going to flip. There's the Brainstorm.
You did Brainstorm or Brainstorm.
We've got a second land. Maybe we're going to see something like Monastery Swiftspear.
And now Kevin is cooking with gas. He's got his second land. He's going to be able to play threats and hold up a small amount of permission at the same time, as well as having mana to dig for more relevant action if he needs it in the form of Brainstorm. And so he's just firing it off. On the one hand, the shields are basically down for Cedric to do something on his turn. But Kevin Ann is mounting the offense he needs to pressure Cedric's life total.
It does look like he has a couple Spell Pierce, which we're getting to the point of the game where it's not going to do a whole lot.
Yeah, especially if Cedric does have a City of Traders in his hand.
But he can still shuffle it away to Brainstorm, maybe pitch it to a Force of Will.
Yeah.
And he does have a Sulfuric Vortex that he might be able to deploy next turn, which is really going to help turn the heat up on Cedric.
Yeah, that'll make it so even Grizzlebrand won't be able to save him in a lot of scenarios.
So Kevin Ann is just going to Brainstorm, pumping up that Swift Spear, going to get it for 5 damage, knock Cedric down to 14 and pass the turn back. Cedric's going to draw, doesn't look too happy with what he's picked up.
Yeah,
just pass the
and
turn back to Kevin.
That was a pivotal turn for Cedric. Now that we're going to Kevin's turn where he can play a 3rd land potentially, Cedric may be running out of turns where Kevin taps out. Kevin might tap out this one more turn or so, but Cedric's really running out of time. He's also going to be in a situation where he's not going to be able to put a fatty into his graveyard and reanimate it because his life total would be too low.
So it looks like Cedric is going to try and Force of Will the Storm Chaser Mage. Kevin is going to be able to cash in one of those Spell Pierces that he has in his hand.
And also get a Prowess Trigger.
Yep, he'll get a Prowess Trigger on his Monastery Swift Spear. Still be able to get in for 1 with that Storm Chaser Mage once it enters the battlefield, since it does have haste. So that's going to be 6 points of damage this turn. Going to knock Cedric down to 6, and he's going to need something in a hurry.
Yeah, it looks like Cedric is going to be dead next turn if he doesn't do anything.
Well, it's a Ponder. Let's see what we've got.
Come on, Ceddy P, you can do it.
Let's go.
Oh, he does not look happy.
He does not.
He had the hood up, rolled up his sleeves, hood down, was ready for war, but his opponent was able to fight back.
He did find an Exhume, but it doesn't look like he has any more creatures in his graveyard.
Yeah, I think he has the Iona in hand.
He's going to shuffle.
I love the little peek there.
Oh, yeah, why not?
To see if he just needed one more card.
Just going to rabbit hole. Might as well. All right, so Cedric's going to shuffle up with this Ponder. All right, Kevin, do your worst. Cut him to it. It's a Force of Will. Not really going to do much. Just going to pass the turn back.
Maybe Kevin has no spells.
Yeah, maybe he just has.
Maybe he just didn't play a land on turn 2 by choice.
Triggers.
Extra dead.
All right, so Cedric did have a show and tell, so he was looking for a fatty. So Kevin Ann is going to take that game off Cedric, 2-0. He's going to go on to 7-2 and lock himself up a spot for day 2 tomorrow. Cedric's going to fall to 6-3 and likely not be invited back to play in the Legacy Open. But there's still a Standard Classic and a Modern Classic.
And 6-3 is a fine, that's a fine win ratio. That's, winning twice as much as you lose. Definitely something to be proud of, even though, he's not making day 2. I think it'll be pretty